If I had a nickel for every time I reviewed the 3D for this movie, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't nearly enough for Coraline, if you ask me. Once again, Coraline is back in theaters, remastered, even though I don't know the full thing they did for the remastering. They upscaled it to 4K, maybe HDR, who knows, but remastered, and once again, just like it originally did in 2009, in 3D. There are 2D screenings for it, which I didn't know till very recently. I thought it was just all going to be 3D screenings, but 2D is fine, and I don't even know if it really matters because the 3D screening we were at was filled up. I have heard from my subscribers that the 3D screenings where they live are packed and filling up, and it's kind of hard to get tickets for it right now. I mean, it's only going to be in theaters for a week, so if you're going to go see it, now's the time to do it. And like I said, when I first reviewed this movie and when I talked about what the remastered 3D version was going to be, I absolutely cannot stress enough how amazing the 3D is, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. For those of you who have never seen Coraline, then this is a good opportunity to see it, but the general premise of the movie is that young Coraline Jones is upset because her parents are kind of ignoring her and neglecting her, and she ends up in this other world. She goes through a little door that leads into a wall, but at night it goes into another world with another family, another mother, but they have buttons sewn over their eyes, and it seems like a paradise. She gets everything she could ever want, all the cake and food and fun, and the neighbors aren't annoying.
And her dad makes a whole garden, that's her face.
Yes. Everything seems wonderful, but it might not all be what it seems. This movie came out in 2008. This was the first film from Laika Studios that would go on to create Paranorman, Box Trolls, Kubo and the Two Strings, and most recently, The Missing Link. And they're getting ready to come out with a new movie called Wildwood, which looks pretty spicy. But none of their movies really hit the level of critical and financial success that Coraline did. Like, they came out of the gate at absolute peak. And while I do enjoy the other Laika films, Coraline just resonated with audiences in a way that the others didn't. And I think seeing all these screenings, even the 3D screenings for these movies, being packed really speaks to that. Even 15 years later, people are still filling up these theaters, maybe more now than they ever did, to see this movie. And it's not hard to see why. It is fantastic. Everything about it is great. It's not afraid to be a little bit edgy. And on top of that, the 3D is just fantastic. It's like a masterclass in filmmaking. I think that the voice acting and the animation and the set design and the cinematography, everything about it is so tightly wound, and also the soundtrack is iconic. I mean, everything about this movie is iconic. It is also not something that they really made a franchise out of. Any other studio would have seen that success and would have been like, all right, Coraline 2, let's send it out. Coraline 3, just keep it up and out the Coraline movies until they don't make money anymore. But like I said, we made the one movie, and we're going to re-release it eventually maybe, but we're good at the one. So what did you think about Coraline?
So I never saw Coraline when it came out. I was about 12 when it came out, and by that time I was really into anime, and my friends and I, not that we were like, oh, Western stuff is not cool. It's more like it just wasn't really on our radar. We were just kind of like, oh yeah, anime, and then we were just kind of like, oh yeah, that's a thing. Okay. And we just never really thought about it after that. So I never saw Coraline until...
There's a lot of stuff like that for you. Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, Back to the Future. That stuff came out before you were born, to be fair. It came out before I was born. Well, except for Harry Potter, obviously. Yeah. The Matrix, which we watched recently. Pacific Rim, which is basically just, American Neon Genesis.
Yeah, so I just never thought about it. Like, I knew that it was like a cultural icon. I kind of associated it with like The Nightmare Before Christmas in that sense, because it was like a stop motion movie, cultural phenomenon, and it was kind of everywhere in like Hot Topic and stuff, and all their like pop cultural stores.
Directed by the same guy, too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of how I thought about that. It was kind of like a Nightmare Before Christmas, and I didn't even see Nightmare Before Christmas until I was like in high school. That kind of shows how I just completely missed a lot of cultural touchstones. Yeah, so I never saw Coraline until you showed me the DVD, because you said that
I have the 3D Blu-ray. It's somewhere up here. Here it is. It's got a little damage to it, but the movie still plays.
Yeah, and you said that this was the movie that got you into 3D stuff.
No, that was Journey to the Center of the Earth that got me into it.
Ah.
Yes. Coraline would have done it if I had seen that at the time as well. I was very impressed.
Yeah.
So when did I show you that? It was this year that you saw it for the first time?
A few months back, yeah.
Yeah, so she got to see it and then see it again.
I really enjoyed Coraline. I really, really did. And I see exactly why it's as big of a cultural touchstone as it is now. Even, like, at our job...
We do school photography for Light Touch.
We meet kids in various grades. I have seen probably no fewer than 5 girls named Coraline in my time, and that's kind of how big it is that people are naming their children after the main character of this movie.
There's a lot of teenagers at the screening too. Like I said, it was packed.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of teenagers coming out of there, kids that either weren't alive when the movie came out the first time, or they were infants when this movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was awesome. I was really happy to see that a new generation is going to get to be able to experience and enjoy this movie in 3D the way that it is meant to be seen, which we'll talk about in just a second once you're finished.
I really enjoyed it. It definitely has a kind of Alice in Wonderland plot, kind of meets like Wizard of Oz, I guess.
It's a little bit of an isekai, kinda.
It is, yeah. It's kind of isekai.
It's like an actual real place that she's going to, but it's like the facade, basically.
It has that kind of feel, and I grew up with the Wizard of Oz. That was like one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. I said Alice in Wonderland because she like follows the creature into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, she literally follows the little hopping mouse, which is actually a rat in disguise as a hopping mouse.
Unlike with the Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland, where it's a dream, here it is actually real, where this creature called the Beldam lives, and she lures kids in with the promise of getting whatever they want, and she kidnaps them once they trust her, steals their eyes, and basically eats their souls, and they're stuck there forever until they can get their eyes back. That is really dark. Not even when you think about it, just when you say it out loud. I was explaining this movie to my mom, and she was like, "It's a kid's movie?" And I was like, yeah, it is. I really like stuff that isn't afraid to push the envelope.
Since a lot of Laika movies are basically self-funded by Travis Knight, they're able to get away with a lot of stuff that a lot of studios would probably give them notes saying, could you dial this back just a little bit?
And he's like, no.
It's got to be a little bit more friendly. We got to have marketable plushes. You don't see any marketable plushes for Coraline, although they are selling a lot of merch. They have like the shirts, they have the vinyl, which is like a giant button. It's a really cool aesthetic.
I thought the 3D was really, really good. I love it that the opening sequence where the needle just comes out directly into your face. And I actually did see someone further down the row like reach out for that needle. And when she goes into the tunnel, when it goes back into the screen, that's really cool. All the parts where the other characters just get up and close with Coraline, and because it's from her perspective, they get up and close with the viewer. I think it's really, really cool. It's very important for the story because it's showing what Coraline is seeing. It allows us to kind of look at things from her perspective and not just as a third-party viewer. We are Coraline in those moments. We understand how scary or how enthralling this world is.
This is not just a masterclass in storytelling and filmmaking, stop motion animation. Like everything about this movie is fantastic, and the 3D just adds literally a whole nother layer to it that just expands the storytelling so much more, so much so that, and I said this in the original video, and I think I said this when I was talking about the remaster, was that if you don't see it in 3D, you're missing an entire aspect to the storytelling. The 3D in the real world is very flat and dull, just like the colors and the cinematography. It's very dull and boring and flat, and then when she goes into this other world, which is marked by the paper mice coming out of the screen, the nice pop-out shot, and there was a few people that were gasping in the theaters with some of these pop-outs. You're like, whoa! And I mean, they don't make 3D movies like they used to. Like, I know Deadpool and Wolverine did really good for some of its 3D, but it only had them in specific parts of the movie. It felt a little bit more gimmicky there than it did here, where the 3D feels like an extension of the storytelling. And so because the real world is so dull and boring, that's how Coraline sees it, but she sees this other world as this amazing and exciting place. And so the 3D's super deep there and the camera's flying all over the place and there's all this pop out and all this crazy stuff happening. And so you as the audience member see that and you're like, oh man, I really like this place too. Oh, 3D's so cool and I love the pop out and whoa. And then you go back to the real world and it's really dull and flat and the sets were literally designed to be compressed to make it look even flatter. Everything about this movie from the ground up was designed to be seen in 3D. It is so well used. Like, this is a movie that, and I know they don't teach 3D storytelling anymore, but if they did, just show them this movie and you're like, okay, this is how you do it. This is how it's used. It's not used in an obnoxious, over-the-top manner. It has great pop out. It has great depth. It uses it in very cool and interesting way. When she goes through the tunnel and you see it expand, and as the tunnel pushes back, the 3D also expands to accompany that introduction to the other world. And you can immediately tell as Coraline is crawling through, you can see her model has more dimension and shape. It's just amazing. And the 3D goes from this thing of excitement and wonder to, in the later half of the movie when shit hits the fan, to like fear and danger and intensity. And they push it so hard at the end when the entire other mother's room turns into the web and it drops into the floor, or when Coraline is walking through the world and she's in the white void and then the house and everything comes back and it's untextured, and then the world starts like pulling up behind her and disappearing when she gets all the children's eyes at the end. And it's so incredibly intense. There are moments where I think the pop out could have been lingered on a little bit longer, but I think it's better for them to like kind of move on from that so it doesn't become a gimmick. It is so expertly done. I cannot praise the 3D in this movie enough. It is like the peak standard. I know a lot of people say, oh, Avatar, this, that, and the other. I honestly think, for my money, this movie has more business being in 3D than Avatar does. I know that's sacrilege and a lot of people aren't going to want to hear that, but this movie just uses it in a storytelling way so much better than Avatar does. I get the point of Avatar being in 3D is that you feel like you're in Pandora, and the 3D is really good, and especially in Way of Water, but it doesn't feel like it serves a storytelling purpose beyond just the experience of being on Pandora. And sometimes it's fine for the 3D to be that, the experience, like you really feel like you're there, but it doesn't really engage the audience as much as 3D does in this movie, or something like How to Train Your Dragon. Now, I could say it's kind of cheating because How to Train Your Dragon and this movie are animated, but so is Avatar, isn't it?
It basically is.
Yeah.
I will say the only criticism that I will make is I wish that they had actually like lingered on the shot where the web drops out a little bit more, because as soon as the web drops out, they switch to a shot of the cat trying to get his footing, and it's like, oh, I wish I could have seen that like go more like deeper and truly like fully appreciated just like that shot.
I watched the filmmaker's commentary and they said that they pushed the 3D in that scene harder than they did for the rest of the movie. So you don't want to like fatigue the audience's eyes. You don't want to have them go, ah! It's exceptional. It really is. And if you're still on the fence, or you're like, whatever, 3D is a gimmick, I'm telling you, not this time. Not this movie. This is absolutely worth going to see. Even if you can't watch 3D movies for whatever medical reason, maybe both your eyes don't work properly, or you get headaches, nausea, that's fine. This is still a fantastic movie to go see. It's in 2D. Absolutely worth it across the board. But for sure, if you don't have anything impeding your ability to watch 3D movies, you absolutely got to go see this in 3D. It is a must see. Yes. I am giving this the highest praise. And if you guys have the time this week, go see it. It's worth the money. It is worth the time. Who knows? Maybe if it does well enough, they'll extend the screening for it. I remember when Dawn of the Dead came out 2 years ago, they re-released Dawn of the Dead in 3D. They actually extended it by a week because it had done so well. So many people were going to go see the 3D re-release of it. And I thought the 3D in that movie was great. So maybe we'll get the same thing here. I was coming back from the theater already saying I kind of want to go back and see it again at some point. While it's still in theaters, still have that opportunity. But it was awesome, man. It was just like we were right back there in 2009 seeing it for the first time with everybody else. And I'm glad that a lot of people are giving this movie a chance, and I'm glad that they were given the ability to see it again. Make sure you stick around for the credits to see the featurette about how they make the puppets back then versus how they make them now.
And make sure you get there on time because the movie starts at showtime.
Yes.
There are no trailers. It starts at showtime. We had a lot of people that were arriving late.
By the way, huge shout out to Arcade Lighthouse, who told me that the movie starts right at the time it says it's going to. When the movie was starting, there were a lot of seats in the theater that were not filled, and as the movie was like 10-20 minutes into it, people were starting to show up. I would have shown up late. I would have been so fucking mad because there's nothing that says the movie starts at this time. And I think even for other Fathom events that I've been to, it has pre-show, it has like trailers, so I don't know why this one was like, oh, starts right then. That's it. We're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna make dinner and then edit this video. Hopefully don't progress with it. Yeah. Alright, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you later. Make sure you go see Coraline in 3D this week.